Hi guys, it's me, Chatter HD, and welcome to this full live race review for the 2018 Mexican Grand Prix. We're going to review all the teams and what they did at this Mexican Grand Prix and go through every stat, everything that just happened yesterday in Mexico City. Hopefully you guys are doing well after what was a good race yesterday. I don't think yesterday's race was one of the best of the season. But for me, definitely in the top 10, no doubt about that. But yeah, it was a good race yesterday. Hopefully you guys, no matter where you are in the world, are doing all good for this race review. But guys, if somehow you missed out on what happened in terms of the race results from the Mexican Grand Prix of 2018, well, let me update you as to what actually went down. We'll start off with the top 10. So Max Verstappen dominantly winning from Sebastian Vettel second, Kimi Raikkonen third, Lewis Hamilton fourth, and is a now 5 times world champion. Valtteri Bottas is fifth, Hulkenberg sixth, Leclerc seventh, Van Dorn in eighth, very impressive. Ericsson ninth and Gasly 10th, also very impressive. But guys, I just want you to notice, look how many laps behind the midfield is from the race winner. 2 laps. 2 laps. That is so bad. I think right now the midfield is probably the furthest away from the top teams they've been maybe ever. Maybe since the 1950s. I don't know, but that is so bad. 2 laps behind. And we had virtual safety cars during the race, so it's not like they were at full pelt during the Grand Prix. But yeah, that is very bad in terms of the competition. But we'll go on to the bottom 10. You have Ocon in P11, Lance Stroll P12, Sirotkin 13th, Hartley 14th, Magnussen 15th, Grosjean 16th. By the way, Romain Grosjean, I know he had to make an extra pit stop for some reason. I don't know what it was, but 3 laps down on the race winner. Very embarrassing. Very, very embarrassing. And your retirements are Daniel Ricciardo, Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz, and Fernando Alonso. So those are your results. But now let's go straight into the top teams and how they got on in Mexico City. First off, Mercedes, who, when it came to the race, in terms of their race pace and their performance, this was one of, if not their worst race of the season in terms of the result and just the performance of the car. Hamilton made a great start, got up to first initially and then dropped down to second because Verstappen dived down the inside into turn 1. I thought Lewis did well to hold on to second for such a long time, but he did not have enough pace in that car to hold off Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo at the time, and his tyres were struggling so much. Mercedes were struggling a lot on their tyres. They just could not keep them fresh, or just could not avoid wearing their tyres out. So in terms of, for Lewis Hamilton, what happened in his race, it wasn't actually that great. But of course it doesn't matter, because Lewis Hamilton is now a 5 times world champion. Fully deserves it. He has been clearly the best driver in 2018. Compared to Sebastian Vettel, I thought in the first few races, Vettel was about equal, if not slightly better. But I would say, since the British or Austrian Grand Prix, I think Lewis has been the best driver on the grid and has been so consistent, so fast, and just too good. And for Lewis Hamilton, this is what he had to say after winning his 5th World Championship. Let's hear from him now. It's a very strange feeling right now. Honestly, I'm just so grateful. To my family back home, I love you. Thank you for all the support. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all the hard work my dad did and my family. It's a very humbling experience. And that's a good point about his dad. I forgot his name now. But, his dad really did help Lewis have the career he's gone on to have. Absolutely. And without him, Lewis Hamilton might not even be in Formula 1. So, very good point he makes there. And, of course, is very emotional about winning his 5th World Championship. But where does this put him now? Post this title, where is he now ranking amongst the all-time greats, I guess. Well, here you go. So, post his title win, he is now tied for second in terms of World Championships with Juan Manuel Fangio for 5. Michael Schumacher is still at the top for 7 titles, but Michael Schumacher, and I never thought I'd say this, is now catchable for Lewis Hamilton. He's definitely catchable. If he stays at this level and Mercedes stay at this level and they don't drop off pace-wise, I think Hamilton could not only equal but break Michael's record of World Championships. I really do. He's in such a good run of form at the minute. He's looking so good. Ever since 2014, he has been just exceptional, I have to say. And for this season, well, just look at those stats. That just shows you how much, for me, he does deserve it. 9 race wins. That's in Baku, Spain, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Singapore, Russia, Japan. Very good from Lewis Hamilton. Pole positions wise, I think at the start of the season, he wasn't too good when it came to qualifying compared to, say, Vettel, but I think the Mercedes was struggling a bit. You know, the Australian Grand Prix, you know, it was a great lap, but after that, he wasn't consistently, you know, right up there like he has been for the last few races, because I don't think he was quite at it like he has been, you know, the last few Grand Prix. So, yeah, for pole positions, definitely in the last few race weekends, he has been fantastic when it has come to qualifying, especially that lap in Singapore. 15 podiums, that's enough, of course, to win a championship. That's 15 podiums, by the way, in 19 races. Very consistent. And you have 358 points for Lewis Hamilton. Again, thoroughly deserves a 5th World Championship. You can dislike the guy as a person, and you can doubt, you know, what he's done in the past. But you cannot doubt that he is an all-time great of the sport, a legend of the sport, and that he does have the capability of becoming, statistically, the most successful F1 driver of all time. It's definitely possible. He may not go down as a, you know, as good of a driver as Michael Schumacher, in your opinion, but statistically, it's definitely possible for him to break Michael's record. So great there for Lewis Hamilton, and again, fully deserves his 5th World Championship. But now we'll go on to Valtteri Bottas. What an awful race. Just no race pace at all. Now, I know Lewis Hamilton was struggling, but at least Hamilton, for quite a while, was up in the podium positions. Bottas, the best he could do for a long part of this Grand Prix was P5. That's just, I'm afraid, not good enough from Valtteri Bottas. He did 3 pit stops because I think he did an extra pit stop because his tyres were not doing well, and then he did another pit stop to put on the hypersoft tyres at the end just to go for the fastest lap. He did have a bit of contact with Sebastian Vettel on the first lap. In my opinion, it's just a racing incident. I don't think anyone's at fault. Bottas tried ambitiously to go around the outside, and Vettel came across, which was always going to happen. Contact was made, but yeah, there you go. But, you know, Bottas was never going to get through, and I'd have to say, for the 2nd race weekend in a row, just not good enough from Valtteri Bottas. But for Mercedes, all good, I think, for this weekend, with Lewis Hamilton clinching his 5th World Championship. And for the Brazilian Grand Prix, I don't think necessarily they'll beat Ferrari, but I think they do have a very good chance of clinching the Constructors' Championship in Sao Paulo. So we'll see what they do in Brazil when it comes to the Constructors. But yeah, I think Mercedes will have that wrapped up. Then we'll get on to the Constructor standings, by the way, guys, later on in this review. But we'll move on now to Ferrari. Sebastian Vettel, I thought, was the driver of the day yesterday on Sunday. Started in P4. Didn't have the greatest start, to be honest. He was, you know, close to Ricciardo, but just couldn't, you know, get past. Had the contact with Bottas, which was, again, all fine for me. But after that, he did have the race pace compared to, especially Mercedes, and at times, and maybe most of the race, Red Bull. Ferrari, when it came to race pace, were very good. If only they started in third or started in second, they could have gone on, maybe not to win this race, but been a bit closer to Max Verstappen at the end of the Grand Prix with Sebastian Vettel. But yeah, definitely for me, Sebastian, driver of the day. Great pass on Ricciardo, great pass on Lewis Hamilton, and thoroughly deserved to finish in second place. Let's hear from Sebastian about his race in Mexico. He says, I'm glad that Kimi and I were on the podium today, and also because the atmosphere is always great, but obviously I am disappointed for the result of the Drivers' Championship. Of course he's going to be, and I've seen some images of him just, I wouldn't say emotional, but definitely distraught because he knows that he's missed quite a big opportunity this season to win his 5th World Championship. And yeah, he just has not, I'm afraid, for his talent level, been good enough. Not been good enough at all. He also says, at the beginning of the race, I was looking after my tyres a little bit. He definitely was, because he ran longer into the Grand Prix, and that's why he was so fast in the second stint of the Grand Prix. Then he says, then after passing Lewis, we thought about putting some pressure on Max. And finishes off by saying, but he was too quick to catch. And that's true. That is true. Sorry guys, my throat is still quite sore. Yeah, it's true. He was too quick to catch. Again, if Vettel had started in third, or maybe on the front row, maybe he could have won the race. But yeah, he was just too far behind after the first stint. Just way too far behind, I'm afraid. So, yeah, when it comes to race victory, you know, they could have done better to set that up. But very good result for Sebastian when it comes to getting on the podium. Next up is Kimi Raikkonen. Now, Raikkonen had a very quiet race. He did eventually, after about 50-odd laps, get past Valtteri Bottas. And I think he deserved to, because I think Kimi had the better race pace. But I don't think Kimi deserved to get a podium. I think Kimi probably deserved to finish at about P5 at best. I don't think Kimi deserved to finish in third. Ricciardo was better during the entire weekend. And Lewis Hamilton, I thought, drove a better race because he had the slower car in terms of race pace and was on the podium for 40-odd laps. So, for me, yes, he got a podium, but he didn't really deserve it, let's be honest, guys. But let's hear from Kimi about his race. Today, I was pretty happy with the car. Obviously, the result is not ideal, but from where we started, we did our best. That's true, they did do their best from where they started. He also says, we got 2 cars on the podium and some more points for the team. The first set of tyres was a bit tricky. For sure, the second one was better, but that's what we expected it to be. Very true. The first set of tyres was the ultra soft tyres they qualified on. Those tyres were not always going to feel great at the start of the Grand Prix. But yeah, the Ferrari, after its first pit stop, just came alive. Really did come alive. And that's how, for Vettel, he got on the podium. And that's how for Raikkonen, he finished on the podium because he kept his tyres in good shape compared to Hamilton, Bottas, and even Ricciardo, even though Ricciardo was quite far ahead. So, you know, in terms of time management, a good race from Kimi, but in terms of pace, I don't think he deserved to finish on the podium. But for Ferrari, a good result. They continue to close in on Mercedes and the Constructors. I don't think they will win the Constructors. And quite frankly, I don't think they deserve to. I think Mercedes have been clearly the better team in 2018. So, again, they have a chance. But I don't think they will. And I don't think they should, to be honest. But we'll move on from them and go on to Red Bull Racing. Max Verstappen winning the Mexican Grand Prix. Again, very similar to last year in dominant style. Thoroughly deserved to win after what has been a great race weekend. He was the best driver throughout the entire weekend. He was fastest in practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, Q2, not fastest at the end of qualifying, but in the race was just so good. I don't think he was driver of the day because I do think his car was the best out there, but definitely one of the best out there for sure. Very, very good performance. Got past Lewis Hamilton at the start when it looked as though Hamilton could get into the lead. So great overtake there by Max, and from then on in, no one could get near him. You know, Vettel closed the gap a bit, but realistically, Max was never going to be beaten here at the Mexican Grand Prix. Let's hear from Max about what he thought of his race win. The podium, like last year, is amazing. To have a DJ and the crowd coming down from the stands is really cool. 2 years in a row makes it even better. Yeah, the atmosphere, you know, when Max won and was on the podium was absolutely fantastic. And Mexico, I think, is becoming one of the best races in terms of atmosphere in the entire calendar now, up there with Monza and Silverstone. I definitely think Mexico is up there now as one of the best races of the year in terms of the fans and the atmosphere it generates, especially on race day. But yeah, Max Verstappen, very, very good performance, and now is starting to dominate this Grand Prix. So we'll see what he does next year. I think next year and, well, the years going forward, I wouldn't be surprised if Max made this a guaranteed win, you know, for the next few years, kind of like Lewis Hamilton has done over the years at the Canadian Grand Prix, because he just seems to be so good around this track. So, yeah, very good there for Max. But, and I know a certain Niblo in the chat is not going to look forward to this, but we have to talk about it. Daniel Ricciardo. Ah, what a shame. What a shame. Happened again. Another reliability issue. First, let's go through his race. First off, he got a very Australian start to the Grand Prix. Dropped down to third place from pole position. But I thought after that, had a mostly good race. I thought at times he did drop off quite a bit and his tyres were falling off. But I thought most of the race he was good and definitely deserved to be on the podium ahead of Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen and Valtteri Bottas. It looked as though he was going to finish in second and make it a Red Bull 1-2. But then, about 10 laps to go, whilst holding off Sebastian Vettel, something in the power unit has broke. And he broke down at the end of that long start-finish straight. And that adds to another retirement. In 2018, he's retired, you know, from races this season in Bahrain, Baku, in Austria, Germany, Spa, Monza, USA, that was last weekend, and this race. Just when is it going to end for Daniel Ricciardo? I don't know, but it has to. Sometime surely it has to end. He did say after the race that he doesn't even feel like doing the last two races. I think he will turn up, by the way, but I wouldn't blame him if he didn't turn up. Because this was his last realistic chance of winning for Red Bull. And you could argue, if Renault don't improve enough, this could be his last realistic chance at winning a Grand Prix. So, you can't blame him being so disappointed with what happened. Just, again, so disappointing. Was having such a good race, you know, got past Lewis Hamilton to get up to third. And then when Vettel pitted, you know, stayed out, was holding off Vettel very well. Did the fastest lap a couple laps before he broke down. And then that happens. What a shame. What a shame. Especially if you are an Australian and a Daniel Ricciardo fan. But I'm afraid that's just the way it has been for Daniel over the last, well, couple seasons, I'm afraid. But we'll move on from Red Bull and now go on to the drivers' standing. So Lewis Hamilton is now uncatchable in the lead of the Drivers' Championship, with Sebastian Vettel second, who has now confirmed that he will finish in second place. Kimi Raikkonen is still P3 with that third place here at Mexico. And then you have Bottas in P4, not too far behind. And Verstappen, after his race win, is P5 and could beat Bottas to P4 in the Drivers' Championship. We'll have to see what he does in Brazil and Abu Dhabi. But yeah, Verstappen definitely can beat Bottas to P4. There's no doubt about that. And then Daniel Ricciardo, of course, with his reliability issues, P6. And look just how far off he is his teammate. That's what? I think that's 70 points. Now, I think Verstappen over the course of 2018 has been better, but not that much better. Not 70 points. That just shows you how bad the reliability has been from Daniel Ricciardo's side. But there you go. There is the driver's standings. But before, guys, I move on to the midfield, let's see what you guys have to say about Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, the Drivers' Championship, Lewis Hamilton winning his 5th World Championship. I'm going to read the chat for the next, I would say, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll move on to the midfield. Right, let's now go through all this. By the way, just to let you guys know, if you are new to the channel, we do this every race weekend from Thursday until Monday. So don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Either bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe there, or click on my channel name and subscribe by going to my channel page and hitting the subscribe button. Right, now let's read out your comments and answer any questions. Ronan Brady, great to see him, says the car is cursed. Absolutely. Ronan Brady, how far is Hulkenberg behind Ricciardo? I'm not too sure, but I think it's about 60 points. The gap, I think it's about 60 points. So Ricciardo's still going to finish, of course, in 6th, but it should not be that close, to be honest. Mr... I can't read the second name there. I would like to see Renault Power Unit DNF stats per team. If I heard from you before I got the stream set up, I would have put it up. But yeah, maybe for, I don't know, maybe for the podcast tomorrow, I'll put it up on screen for you guys. How many Renault DNFs we've had this season. Legion, do you think Ferrari has a chance at the Constructors? They have a small chance, but that's as big as it is for me. A small chance. They're not going to win the Constructors. They don't deserve to win the Constructors. They are not deserving of winning any titles in 2018. They just have not been good enough. Nathan, Mercedes really need to have good practice sessions to get their tyre wear sorted. They have always had bad tyre wear, but they seem to be able to tune that out. Well, they did have some good tyre wear for quite a few races. For example, the Italian Grand Prix, if you guys remember that. That's why they won that race, because the Mercedes had better tyre wear. So, I don't know what's happened. I really don't know what's happened. I know Mexico is a hot place, but so is Italy at the time of year we hold that Grand Prix. Ronan Brady, what was the worst Ferrari mistake this year? When it comes to the team, you have, what, Shanghai, Bahrain, Baku, Spain, someone's saying Singapore. I'm going to say China, because if you go back and watch the full race, what you had was Vettel was on soft tyres, so was Valtteri Bottas just before they pitted. Valtteri Bottas was in P2. There were cars that had pitted in the midfield that were doing fastest sectors, and that was proving that the undercut was the way to go. So Ferrari had clear evidence that they should have pitted, but instead were lazy about it, let Valtteri Bottas pit, and then were suddenly surprised when Valtteri came out ahead, when they had clear evidence from, I believe it was the Force Indias, that if you undercut someone, you're going to gain so much time. For me, that was the worst mistake. I know Vettel was cost because of Verstappen later on, but I actually think Vettel would have got a podium if that mistake had not been made, because Verstappen would not have come across Vettel at that certain point. He would have come across Bottas first, and Vettel probably would not have made that mistake, because Vettel would have been in the lead still. So there you go. Ronan Brady watching too many computer screens in China, lol. Yeah, probably. Simon Craglan, what do you think is Hamilton's best race in his F1 career? For me, it's still Silverstone 2008. Yes. Yeah, I'd probably go with Silverstone 2008 as well. Maybe Monaco 2008. That's another great one. Fuji 2007. He's had plenty of great races. Plenty of great races. Han Solo, when Max had 17 Fs, mostly during the first half of 2017, you heard no one blame Red Bull. When Daniel has the same bad luck, all hell breaks loose and Red Bull is blamed for it. Yeah, I have noticed that. And I just want to say now, there is no conspiracy. So please, if anyone actually believes in that, please stop. Because it's not true. Red Bull are not deliberately sabotaging Daniel Ricciardo. I can't believe I actually have to say that, because there are some people out there that literally think that Red Bull are doing this on purpose. How dumb is that? Jesus Christ. Say Regara, if Fernando Alonso gets a triple crown, will that put him off the greats or sort of push him to a better legacy? It'll push him to a better legacy, but when it, comes to the list of F1 greats, I don't think it really improves his position in the top 10. Because if he goes to IndyCar, let's be honest, he is by far the best driver in that field. So he will win the IndyCar title. WEC, he's going to win the title because he's in clearly the best car. So it's not going to improve his stature amongst his peers, say, in F1. JB, what's been Hamilton's best and worst race of the season so far? I think the best was Barcelona and his worst was Montreal. I'm not going to say Montreal because he did have reliability problems. He has some kind of brake issue with some debris in qualifying, and then in the race his engine was overheating and actually losing power. For me, his worst race was probably China, because that track is one of his best tracks in his career, and he was clearly behind Bottas and was getting passed left, right and centre, and was not going really fighting anyone. He was just getting passed by people who had faster cars and were just faster on the day and at that weekend. So I'd have to say the Chinese Grand Prix for me was his worst race of 2018, but he still finished in P4, so wasn't awful result-wise. Right, let me just look through a few more, then I'll move on to the midfield. Will F1, in my opinion, Hamilton's success is just slightly overrated, but then again, I am a Vettel fan. I think you've basically answered your own comment there with why you think he's slightly overrated, or why you think his success is slightly overrated. Simon Cracklin, do you think Ricciardo was disappointed in the race? I mean, it was surprising to see Vettel overtake him. When Vettel passed him, he might have been disappointed, but, with 10 laps to go, he was ahead and looked as though he might be able to hold him off. So, the disappointment of him passing Ricciardo, of him, Vettel passing him, would have been over pretty quickly. Simon Cracklin also says, Mercedes were so poor, really. They were damaging their tyres much more than Ferrari and Red Bull. They must improve in that area. I'm afraid they're never really going to, because this has been a trait of the Mercedes car. Yeah, this has been the trait of the Mercedes car since they came back into Formula 1. They destroyed their tyres. They did it. I think the first time we saw evidence of this was about 2011. That was the second year back. And since then, they've always struggled on tyres compared to Red Bull, Ferrari, even a team like Renault, even though they're miles off the pace. Tyre wear wise, Renault are probably better at keeping their tyres than Mercedes are. It's just an issue they're always going to have. It's like, it's just a trait of their car. Just like it's a trait of the Ferrari to always get a great start. It's always been the trait of the Ferrari to be good off the start line. And for Red Bull, aerodynamically, through the corners, to be the best. It's just a trait of the car that's never going to go away. I guess you could say it's just a design fault, but it's just the way they design their cars, and they've been doing it since they came back to the sport. Right, I'll read out a couple more comments, then I will move on to your midfield. Yeah, Mercedes are the reason Pirelli keep bringing those these ridiculously hard tyres. Yeah, that is true. But the Spanish Grand Prix, the French Grand Prix, and the British Grand Prix, they could have brought softer tyres. They really could have. Just looking at a couple more comments. Han Solo, if you honestly think, let me just read that. Just gone up a minute. Says, if you honestly think that Red Bull would throw away podiums, championship points, and millions of pounds just to punish Daniel, then you are truly bleep. Yep. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. JB, what about Hamilton's best race of the season? Best race, Singapore. Because the Mercedes car was not the best car that weekend. That weekend, if you take away the drivers, I would say the best car was the Red Bull. And then probably the Ferrari. Just ahead of the Mercedes. The Mercedes was not the fastest car that weekend. No chance. Absolutely no chance. Hamilton won that race and got pole because of him, not the car. So I don't want to hear any, BS about, oh, Mercedes, they're cheating or they found, a second or anything like this. They were not the fastest that weekend. Max Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel, I think, proved that because their laps in qualifying weren't that bad. I mean, Vettel made mistakes, but it wasn't an awful lap back in Singapore from Sebastian Vettel. And look just how far off Valtteri Bottas was in P4. So yeah, there you go. But we'll move on now, guys, to your midfield. First off is McLaren, and for once, for the first time since Singapore, a good race. Stoffel Van Dorn finishing a P8 now. He did gain, from the retirement of basically his teammates, Sainz, Perez and Ricciardo. If those four had finished, then he would have finished in P12. But, that's the way it is in Formula 1. And I think he deserved a points finish. His race pace was very good. He was consistently in that massive gaggle of cars that were going for points, such as Ericsson, Gasly, Grosjean, Magnussen, Ocon, Perez. I think Van Dorn deserved points. I really do. Because his race pace was very, very good, very consistent. At one point, he looked as though he was going to try and make a move on Charles Leclerc towards the end of the race. But then Leclerc tried, or did actually, pull away from Stoffel Van Dorn. So it could have been better. Could have been better. Only if the McLaren car, I guess, was faster than it is. But very, very good for Stoffel Van Dorn. And that is his joint best result of 2018. He got 8th in Bahrain and has 8th here in Mexico. So good result there for Stoffel Van Dorn. But for Fernando Alonso, he retired about 5 laps in because of damage sustained after Ocon's front wing then got lodged inside, I think, the barge board or floor of the McLaren car. So yeah, not good for Fernando Alonso, and he probably would have been in the points if it had not been for that, because he was very quick in qualifying and his race pace up until that point didn't look too bad. So a shame for him, but at least McLaren scored points and have pulled away from Force India, who we'll get onto in a moment. They pulled away from Force India in the Constructors' Championship. So good race for McLaren for once. Next up is Renault. They were clearly this weekend the best of the rest. Nico Hülkenberg finished in 6th, even though I think Carlos Sainz, who retired because of some kind of, I think, battery problem or energy store failure from the Renault power unit. I think Carlos Sainz deserved to beat Hülkenberg, but yeah, Hülkenberg, of course, benefited from that and deserved to be ahead of the rest of the cars because the Renault was, again, clearly the best of the rest. I do feel a bit sorry for Carlos Sainz because he has had a very good weekend. In practice 1, he was in P3, practice 2, I think P3 as well. Very good weekend. I was having a good race, but then the issues, arose. So, such a shame. But at least for Renault, they got the result, at least with one of their cars, that they deserved. A top 6 finish. Very, very good. And, well, when it comes to this weekend, let's just look at how good it really was. Here is their entire weekend performance. So, practice 1, they were 3rd and 4th. Practice 2, 3rd and 5th. I will say, if the conditions were as hot as they were on Friday, if they were as hot on Sunday, I think Renault would not have been that far behind Well, maybe not that far behind, you know, the Mercedes cars, but they wouldn't have been 2 laps down. I think Renault would have been faster if it had been as hot as it was on Friday. Then practice 3, they dropped back to P7 and P10. Qualifying, they did the best they could, locking out the 4th row. And then in the race, except for the DNF, they did the best they could, with Nico Hülkenberg in 6th place. And they've all but confirmed now 4th in the Constructors' Championship. So looking good for Renault going forward. And next up we'll go to Force India. Force India, it was looking so good for Sergio Perez. He was running in P7, I think, or P8 for a long time in this Grand Prix after basically making a gamble on his strategy, and it paid off. He ran long into the race on super soft tyres, and the virtual safety car came out because of Carlos Sainz's broken down car. That allowed him to pit, lose less time and come out, and then overtake a couple cars and get up. Maybe not close behind, but definitely closing in on Nico Hülkenberg to be best of the rest. So Force India were looking good with Sergio Perez, but then some kind of brake problem or brake failure happened for Perez midway through the Grand Prix, meaning that he had to retire. Such a shame. He was looking so good. This was going to be his best, I think, race result at his home Grand Prix. So such a shame. Such a shame for Sergio Perez. And this is what Perez had to say to his fans after the retirement. A pity that we could not realise what was a perfect race. The strategy worked as expected, and it looked like we would have a great result at home. I gave everything to get a great result, and I am proud of the effort. I appreciate all the affection from all of the people. So, yeah, him just saying a message to his Mexican fans. And, yep, he gave everything. The team gave everything. But the car, I'm afraid, failed him when he really needed it to stay with him. So, such a shame for Esteban Ocon, though. For the first time in a while, quite a scruffy race. Lost his front wing at turn 3. On the entry to turn 3 on the back of Nico Hülkenberg. Then had to pit at the end of the first lap. But because everyone was struggling on tyres, he then caught people back up and got back towards the points. Had another bit of contact with Pierre Gasly during halfway through the Grand Prix. So again, very scruffy race, and actually finished in P11. So if he didn't have those incidents, I think Ocon would have been probably P8 or P9 in this Grand Prix. But again, a very scruffy race from him. And Force India, again, don't realise the result they should have got. Such a shame, because if they didn't have any issues and Ocon was not so scruffy, they could have finished in P7 and P8. But it was not to be. Again, such a shame for Force India. Hopefully in Brazil, and I think they will be, definitely faster than they were this weekend in Mexico. We'll go on to Williams. I don't think Williams were actually that bad. They finished in 12th and 13th. Lance Stroll was not miles off the points. So good performance by him. Same for Sergei Sirotkin. Not too bad. The race pace was actually quite competitive. So maybe Williams can take something from this in terms of positives. But again, another pointless race for Williams Martini Racing. Next up is Toro Rosso. They did go on to score points, and I thought they would have the opportunity to do so, and they got it with Pierre Gasly, who started from the back of the grid. That's quite incredible, to be honest. Sorry, I didn't think Gasly would score points. I did say in the race watch along, by the way, if you've not checked the race watch along out, it's in the description down below. I thought he would get close, but I did not actually think he would finish in the top 10. But he did, getting 10th place. And I think with the damage he had for quite a long time after contact with Esteban Ocon, I think he deserved it. The pace was very good. He made a couple neat little passes when he needed to. I thought it was a good race from Pierre Gasly. And again, deserved to finish in P10. For Brendan Hartley, though, yeah, where was he? Where was his pace? Practice 1 and practice 2, he was in the top 10. From Saturday morning onwards, he was back to his bad old self, I'm afraid, and well, he was kind of bragging about how this new upgrade that Toro Rosso brought was suiting him, so they kept on his car, but I'm afraid it didn't really work, because even though he did have a couple small pieces of contact, I think with Ocon as well, I don't think he would have scored points. He just did not have enough pace in himself to do so. So, yeah, not good from Brendan Hartley, but there you go. That's not really a surprise from Hartley because he has been, I think, mostly poor in 2018. Next up is Haas. What an awful race. They were looking good in the first stint. They were up in the points and they had not pitted yet for a long time with Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean. But then after pitting, they just went nowhere. I don't know what happened to Romain Grosjean because he pitted again and did 2 stops instead of 1. Magnussen pitted once but could not get past anyone. So I don't know what happened at the end of the race, but Haas this weekend have just been nowhere. Very similar to Monaco, and I think as Nib confirmed, I can't remember when it was, maybe the qualifying or race watch along, confirmed that, and it is true, basically, that the Haas on the softer tyres just struggles to heat them up or get the performance out of them. I don't know, but it's not I don't think it's a coincidence, because you look at Monaco, we had the Hypersoft there. Canada, they weren't that great there. The Hypersoft was at that race. So yeah, I think Haas, when it comes to softer tyres, just cannot get the pace out of them. But that's good news for them, tyre-wise, because Brazil, we have the super soft, soft and medium. So that'll be good for Haas for that race, and they will be quicker anyway because that track suits the Haas better than Mexico. But such a shame. It's such a shame to see Haas falling off so bad at the end of 2018 when they were looking so good for 4th in the Constructors' Championship. Such a shame. And the last team is Sauber. Now Sauber, I did not think they would score points. I really didn't, because starting on the Hypersoft tyre I thought would be an issue. For Marcus Ericsson it was. He was holding up Sergio Perez, Kevin Magnussen, I think Grosjean as well, in a bit of a train for the last point. Eventually Perez got past, but Ericsson was really struggling in the first stint and did help his teammate Charles Leclerc finish in the points, because if he did not hold up Perez, I don't think Leclerc would have finished in P7, because Leclerc would have been under pressure from other cars, but Ericsson did well to hold them back. But Ericsson finishing the points in P9. So the pace after his first stop was very good from Marcus. Marcus, I think, even said on Twitter that he feels as though that was his best race in F1, which is quite a claim. But if he feels that way, then there you go. Very good race for Marcus Ericsson. And again, Charles Leclerc showing why he is at Ferrari for 2019, finishing in P7. The Sauber was not quick enough to be in that kind of position, but of course, with Charles Leclerc at the wheel, he gets that position anyway. So very good race from Charles Leclerc and a great weekend from Leclerc. And as I'll show in a moment, Sauber have passed Toro Rosso for 8th in the Constructors, as we now move on to the Constructors' standings. So Mercedes lead by 55 points at the top of the Constructors. Mercedes can clinch the Constructors in Brazil, and most likely they are going to, barring a disaster. So Ferrari in 2nd, and then Red Bull, of course, clearly in 3rd place. Then you have Renault, now 30 points clear of Haas. It's not over, but realistically it is. Haas are 5th. McLaren, 15 points clear of Force India in 6th. McLaren, I think, have a chance to hold on to 6th. And you know what, I'm going to say it now, I think they will. I don't think there's enough races and enough pace in the Force India to get 16 points to pass McLaren for 6th. And then there you go. Sauber are now 8th ahead of Toro Rosso in 9th. Sauber now 3 points clear, and I think with the next race being Brazil, I think Sauber will take 8th in the Constructors. Toro Rosso are 9th, and then Williams, of course, are in last place. So that is your Constructors standings. But now, guys, for the next half an hour, Let me just get it up a minute. Hold on. Doesn't seem to be working. I was going to say let's move on to the Q&A, but for some reason it doesn't seem as though the screen is quite working. There you go. So let's go on, guys, now to a Q&A for about 30 minutes. So you guys can ask me anything, and I'll try and answer as many as I can. I probably won't answer everyone's because there is going to be quite a few. But again, I'll try my best to answer as many as possible. Before we go on to the Q&A, though, just to remind you guys, we do this every race weekend. So don't forget to subscribe. Either hit the bottom right of the screen to subscribe, or click on my channel name and go to my channel page and hit the subscribe button as well. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video and what you thought of the Mexican Grand Prix. Don't forget to join our Discord server as well, link below in the bottom of the description. The best way to get notifications for my videos is the Discord server, so you've got to make sure you get your yourself over to that. With about 85 people in that server, so we're getting close to 100. So hopefully, guys, we can get to 100 people in that server very, very soon. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, a great place to keep up to date with the channel and when I'm going live and what I'm doing. And if there are any issues as to why I'm not uploading, then Twitter is a great place to keep up to date with me and the channel. And as well, don't forget to check out chazahd.com, link below in the description. Another great way to keep up to date with me on YouTube. Right, let's get into some questions, shall we? Let me just look for some, as I'm sure people are now typing away what they're going to say. I see some harsh puns in the chat. Just having a look at the chat to find any questions before we get some going. Right, I think we now have a couple. Right. So, the first one is from Sebastian. Will Ferrari be better early in the season or middle of the season next year? I think middle of the season. Ferrari don't tend to always start off the season fast. What happens with Ferrari is normally they start off, I wouldn't say slow, but not as good as they are going to be. But then from basically during the European season, Ferrari, that's where they provide their best performances, and that's what I think is going to happen in 2019. I think Ferrari, if it's still, between Mercedes and Ferrari, which it most likely will be, Mercedes will be fastest, I think, for the first 3 or 4 races, and then during the European season, Ferrari will come back, but then I think Mercedes will come back during the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 races, but we'll have to see. Right, let's go on to some others. Will F1 question to me and to everyone in the chat. If you could have any 4 drivers in the history of motorsport battling for the championship, who would you want those 4 drivers to be? I think Niblo just said, very good question, and it is. I would want Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, and who else? This might be a surprise. I'm going to go Senna, Schumacher, Hamilton, and Nigel Mansell. There you go. I think Mansell, when it came to wheel-to-wheel battles against, the best in the sport, that guy, on his day, unbeatable. Absolutely unbeatable. Such a fast driver. LATV, do you think Lewis Hamilton will surpass the great Michael Schumacher with titles? I think it's difficult to say. If Mercedes are still as good as they are right now, yes, I think he will. But we don't know. Mercedes might get the 2019 regulations wrong, and then he might end up maybe at maximum being a 6-time champion. We'll have to see. But again, if Mercedes stay at this level, I think he will. And I think, by the time he gets to his end of his contract, which is the end of 2020, if he does have 7 titles by then, I think he will sign another contract, a short-term one, to then win title number 8 or 9. Prussia, do you think it was about the tracks, or do you believe that Renault have improved their car? Renault have improved their car because the US Grand Prix, they were very good. They were up in P7 with Hülkenberg. Very good performance. So I think it is the car has improved for sure. I don't think the car is anywhere near close to the top teams, but definitely has improved. You cannot doubt that. Warren M, I'm Australian Chaz. You know what I thought of the race. How long is Vettel's contract and Rise? Vettel's, I believe, is 2020 as well, or 2021. So around the same time as Lewis Hamilton. Nathan, 2019 has the potential to be a tasty year. Ferrari are ending this year strong, so should start next year running. Also, Honda partnership could be successful for Red Bull. Even if Ferrari start next year strong like they did pace-wise this year, that doesn't mean they're going to win a title. They need to have a dominant car next year to win the title. Unless Leclerc really does pull out a great season, even if the car is equal with the Mercedes, I think they're going to need a car even faster compared to Mercedes next season. Niblo, in response to Will F1's question, says Senna, Schumacher, Prost and Alonso. Interesting. Rona Brady, does Charles Leclerc remind you of a young Sebastian Vettel? No, I don't think he does. I don't think he does. To be fair, I think Pierre Gasly reminds me more of a young Sebastian Vettel than Leclerc does. I don't know why, but Charles Leclerc reminds me, not in terms of his attitude or his emotional side, but I don't know why. Maybe it's because of just the way this certain driver had a connection with Ferrari in his only years in the sport. But he kind of gives me that Gilles Villeneuve feel. I don't know why. I just look at him and think Gilles Villeneuve for some reason. Legion, do you think Ricciardo will improve Renault's performance by quite a bit next year? If he is, like we think he probably is, a better driver than Hülkenberg, then yes, he will. Julian Oms, do you think this will be Lewis Hamilton's last World Championship if he doesn't win in 2019? No, I think he'll win another one. I think he'll win at least one more. At very least, but I see him winning 7, if not 8, at this rate. Will F1, my top 6 greatest drivers are Senna first, Schumacher second, Fangio third, joint fourth is Prost, Hamilton and Vettel. Okay, I might as well just say my top 10. My top 10 of all time is 10th, I'm going Sebastian Vettel. I don't think Vettel is right up there with one of the all-time greats just yet. I know that might be controversial to say, but I don't think he's right there. I don't think he is. He still has a lot to prove, in my opinion. And then Alonso in 9th. 8th, I would go Jackie Stewart. 7th, Alain Prost. That might be a surprise, but I don't rate Prost as highly as the people ahead of him. In 6th, Jim Clark. 5th, Niki Lauda. And people might be surprised by that, but the reason I put Niki Lauda in 5th is because, you know, he's 3-time world champion, and that year in 1976, for me, makes him a top 5 driver of all time because, and they might be surprised because he obviously didn't win the title, but because he had that crash at the Nürburgring, missed, was it 2 races or 3 races, and still came back and only lost the title by 1 point. Lauda did, in my opinion, deserve to win that championship because of the heroic way he came back from what was basically a near fatal accident. He was given his last rites, I think, twice in hospital. He literally came back from the brink of death to almost win the championship, and then in 77 he won the championship. So I think Lauda, absolutely, for what happened in his career and how he came back from that accident, has to be, for me, the top 5 greatest drivers of all time. And I think Niki Lauda, by the way, is probably the best driver that was around in the 1970s. in terms of talent, especially quite clearly, I think Lauda was the best driver in the 1970s. Lewis Hamilton now for me is fourth, behind Fangio in third. Second is Michael Schumacher, and first for me is Ayrton Senna. Right, let me read through some more, shall I? Julian Arms, I would go Senna, Prost, Schumacher, Hamilton, Vettel, Fangio. That would be my, the ultimate championship battle. Andrew Drury. Sorry, he says Maldonado, Palmer, Grosjean and Ide for an ideal championship battle for 4 drivers. Oh my. JB, when you started watching F1, who was your favourite? It was a certain Spaniard, Fernando Alonso. I really just loved the guy because what I saw was a guy who was in a car that was clearly not the fastest, quite far off being the fastest, but he was still putting in 9 out of 10 performances in at least 75% of the races. What an amazing year he had in 2012. And for me, clearly deserved to be champion that season. Just looking... Warren M, Fangio, Brabham, Senna, Prost, Lauda, Alonso, Lewis and Schumacher. Okay. Botti Gamer, have you got any nice things to say about us Mexicans? You put on a great race. And you put on a great show, and you know all the people are just... Mexican F1 fans are definitely one of the best out there. For sure. Just look at the carnival... the carnival atmosphere we have every time we come to Mexico. It's so good. One of the best races on the calendar. Ronan Brady, do you think Max would beat Hamilton in the same car? I do personally. I don't think he would. It would be close, but I don't think he would. He's not consistent enough yet. He needs to learn when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive. He still has that kind of Vettel-ish... sorry, that Vettel-ish kind of weakness that he needs to get rid of. Apex Racing, do you think Hamilton can match Schumacher? Absolutely, I think he can. Sebastian, I have a feeling that Gasly will have a poor season next season. We'll see. I don't really know what to say right now about Gasly. We'll have to see. Ronan Brady, do you think Martin Brundle overrated the Hulk? What did he say exactly? Did he say he's one of the top 5 on the grid or something? Because if he did, then that's obviously no. Not correct for me. Spider Monkey, best F1 YouTubers. F1 Word. Who else? And then you got the game ones, you know, Ben, Tia McMardock, Arava. There you go. I'd say those are the top 3 that I really like. As well, I just want to mention someone else is Formula World. If you've never seen Formula World, then search it on YouTube after this stream ends, and I recommend you watch his videos. Very good, and he's doing very well at the minute, growing very, very fast. So, and if he's listening, congratulations on 30,000 subs. Just looking at these comments. Legion, this is a good one, and you guys can get involved on this one. What is everyone's dream F1 team? Manager, drivers, car. For me, the dream car would have to be the 88 McLaren, the MP44. Drivers, Senna and Schumacher. And then manager, so team principal, I would go with... Oh, who would I go with? That's actually quite interesting. I wouldn't go with Ron Dennis. Ross Brawn as the team principal, with Senna, Schumacher in a MP44. That would be great to see. I thought it said Jeremy then. That says Jamie D. Over the next 3 years, can you personally Let me just read that. Can you personally see Lewis equaling or beating Schumacher's record since only 2 seasons are needed to equal the seasonal championship? I can see him equaling it for sure. Beating it depends on what he wants to do. If he wants to continue, then I think, you know, if he wants to continue after 2020, I think he will beat it for sure. Just looking, Ronan Brady, Alonso has to be better than Lewis. He beat him in a weaker car in 2010, 2012 and 2013. You say that, but 2007. There you go. I understand your argument, but they both were teammates, and Lewis Hamilton proved that season that maybe not the better race driver, but overall I think that season was better, and Lewis has improved a lot since 2007. Fernando has improved as well, but not as much as Lewis, so that's why I rank Lewis ahead of Fernando, because in 2007, if you take away the bad luck at the end of the season in, you know, the gravel trap incident in Shanghai and the Brazilian Grand Prix gearbox issue, Lewis would have won the championship, never mind beat Fernando. So I understand your argument, but I think it's kind of defeated by 2007, I'm afraid. Senna is the best for me too, also from Ronan Brady. Andrew Drury, where would you rank Kimi? Now, this might be a surprise, but I rank Kimi in the next 10 drivers after the top 10. So he, for me, is between number 11 and number 20. That might be a surprise, but you have to think of these reasons. First, his longevity. He's been in the sport for, what, 17, 18 years? And has been consistently on the podium. Has won, what, 21 races? You have to factor that in as well. I think deserves to be, at the very least, a 2-time world champion. Was unlucky in his McLaren days, and that's when Kimi was at his best. So, yeah, I'd say Kimi, for me, is in the top 20 drivers of all time. I know that might be a shock, but I think he is. Will F1, when I'm just looking when he... when will the next part of the 2012 season review be out? It will be out on Thursday, so in 3 days' time, around the same time as now. I'll actually update you guys at the end pretty soon as to what's coming up after this video and between, you know, now and Brazil. Hello to Scotty, who's just joined the race review. JB, have you seen Rush? Yep, and if you haven't seen Rush, then you have to see it. You absolutely have to. It's a must if you are a F1 fan. Scotty, I thought that canned pre-recorded speech by Will Smith to Lewis was a little awkward and cringy in my opinion. I haven't seen it or heard it, so... Okay. Apex Racing, best teams in history? Well, I think you just look at who's been the most successful. Ferrari, McLaren, Williams. Mercedes, though, have to go in there with their current success. Han Solo, thanks for mentioning Lauda in your top 10. He is hardly ever mentioned for some reason, but he is indeed truly one of the greatest drivers ever, no problem. Yeah, he is. I don't see how people cannot rank him at least in the top 7 for what he's done in the sport, and again, from what he came back from. He came back from the brink of death and won 2 world titles after that, and probably should have won in 76 as well. In fact, he should have, because he missed, you know, what was it, 2 or 3 races, and basically did not do the last race because the conditions were too dangerous. If he had done the race, he probably would have won the title anyway. Thanks for the nice things you've said about us Mexican fans. That was flattering, no problem. Ronan Brady, in 2013 and 14, Mercedes was saying he'd be a future world champion and saying he should be in Ferrari. I don't know what you're referencing. Maybe you're talking to someone else. I'm not too sure. JB, Formula World is great. Yeah. What about Into the Barrier? Yeah, he's very good. I do enjoy his videos, but the only issue I have is that he doesn't upload a ton of videos, so I can't really get round to catching them. Hello to Branson Pereira. Good to see you along. Spider Monkey. Best French driver on the grid is Esteban Ocon. I know Charles Leclerc you could argue, but he is a Monegasque driver, not French. By the way, plenty of great questions. Thank you guys so much. Has been a very, very good Q&A. JB, in a reference to the Dream Team, says Ross Brawn, Ferrari, F2004, and Senna and Fangio. And Julian Oms says his manager would be Toto Wolff. Ronan Brady says his would be Horner, Newey, Andy Cowell, and Dan Fallows, with the drivers being Vettel and Hamilton. Niblo says 2004 Ferrari, Horner as team principal, Senna and Alonso as drivers. That would be some battle, mate, but they would have plenty of accidents. They're a bit too fiery, I think, those two, to not crash. Just looking. Prussia says 2008 BMW Sauber. That's a very interesting choice of car. Schumacher and Lauda as drivers, with Braun as manager. That's a very interesting choice you've gone for. The BMW of 2008 wasn't a bad car. The problem that season was that after their first win of the season, I think their only win in F1, in that time when they were BMW Sauber, they decided to give up on developing the car and focus on 2009. And I'm going to say this now, this might be controversial. If BMW fully concentrated on developing the 2008 car, I think Kubica would have won the title. I think he would have, because at the end of the season, he was only 13 or 14 points off, when from Canada onwards, BMW were not developing the car. So just, yeah, ponder that for a moment. What could have happened if BMW had actually developed the car? Ah, what a shame for Kubica. Right, I'll just read through a couple more here, and then I'll get towards the newest ones, because I'm a couple minutes behind, I think. Legion says Ferrari 2004, Newey as engineer, Ross Brawn, Nigel Mansell, and Ayrton Senna, because why not? Will F1, my dream team would be Schumacher and Vettel as drivers, car MP4 for McLaren, that's a 1988 one, with team principal being Adrian Newey. Interesting. I'm not sure Newey would be qualified to do that, but you never know. Right. Nathan, do you know which engine manufacturer has won the most titles? Ferrari, I'm pretty sure. Or it might be Renault, actually. Yeah, it's either Ferrari or Renault. But I'm pretty sure it should be Ferrari, considering that they've been in the sport since the start. Right, just looking at some questions. I'm not, like, intentionally not reading some out, but I'm trying to get, say, to the newest ones, because I'm, again, a couple minutes behind. JB says, in fact, scrap my F2004, I want the R25. That's the 2005 Renault. Warren M, that BMW is certainly the best sounding car. It was very, especially in the Williams BMW days, it was a very nice sounding car. That absolute screaming power. Right. Let me come to the newest now questions. So, JB, what is your favourite brand of car? Mine is Ferrari. Yeah, my favourite brand is Ferrari. In terms of brand of car. Who is your dream strategist? Mine is this year's Ferraris. That's from Ronan Brady. In all seriousness, it has to be Ross Brawn. That guy was so good when it came to that part of the sport. And I'll say again, if I got a job in F1, I would love to be the strategist, because that is, when it comes to planning out your Grand Prix, that's the most interesting part to me, is tyres and race strategy. So, yeah. Apex Racing says he would go MP46, so is that the 1990 McLaren, I think? I think it is, yeah. With Senna and Schumacher Christian Horner as the team principal. Okay. Someone's just gone there. I think Will F1's just gone to... he's put in now his worst team. So this is Will F1's worst team for drivers, car and management. Worst team drivers-wise would be Yuji Ide and Ricciardo Rossi. Oh dear. Oh dear. And team principal would be Andrea Moda, Formula team principal. Can't remember his name. That's probably a good reason why he can't remember his name. And he says his car is the 1994 Pacific. Driver-wise, I would go Ide as well with... who was it? I just had someone in mind then, but he slipped my mind. I can't remember. He literally, it was right on the tip of my tongue, and I forgot. I can't remember, but yeah, it'd be Ide and someone else. Team principal, I'd go Mattiacci. I'm sure you guys remember him, Mr. Mattiacci at Ferrari in 2014. That guy literally had no clue what he was doing. He was a car salesman. And car, I would have to go the... Lola did race, didn't they? Was it 96 Lola raced? I'd go the Lola. I don't know what year though. It's somewhere in, 95, 96, 97. Whenever they were getting kicked out of the sport, I would, yeah, I'll go with that car. I think someone just asked, what is my favourite road car? Yeah, Andrew Drury. I'm not really up to date on current road cars. Like, I don't really look at them as much as I used to, but I still really like the Ferrari 458 Italia from, I think, 2010. I think that car was released, or 2009. That car is so beautiful. Apex Racing, what car manufacturer do you want or back in F1? I want Audi to come into F1. And for, say, back in F1, Porsche. Be great to see them too, because then you'd have a top 6 kind of works teams. I know Red Bull are not a full works team, but with Honda, they basically will be. So, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, Honda... with Red Bull being the Honda works team, and then Renault works team, and then Audi, and then Porsche. That would be great. I know the rest of the field would be cut away, but I think that's the way the sport's going, guys, to be honest. I think eventually it'll just be manufacturers all over the place. I don't think we'll have privateer teams anymore. I think they're basically being pushed out of the sport. I think eventually... I think Force India will stay around for quite a bit because of the Stroll family, but I think Williams will go. I think Haas, unless they really start becoming even better and consistently finish in the top 4 or 5 in the Constructors, I think eventually they may go. Toro Rosso will, of course, stay around. And Sauber are basically a puppy dog for Ferrari. Just looking at someone saying favourite road car, Aston Martin DB9. Yeah, that is a very good car. The LaFerrari, that's from JB. Julian Oms. Worst team must be Fabio, whatever his name was. Briatore. Yeah. Well, it's not the worst team. I understand what you mean in terms of what they did, but... they were still a good team. It's just what they did on that day was very despicable, to say the least. Right, let's read some more. Toro Rosso might get offloaded to Honda, though. That's from Warren M. I don't think that will happen, because if Honda have success with Red Bull are not going to let Honda become a works team. That's not going to happen. Absolutely not going to happen. In a similar way to... when Honda were in the sport in the 80s, Honda, the reason they didn't become a works team is because they had success with Williams and then McLaren. If they have success with Red Bull, then they won't have to become a works team because they'll have, they'll have loads of people having to design the car for them. So it would require less money and less effort. But again, only if it works out. And we can't be sure if it will. Apex Racing says Toyota, Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, and Volkswagen, Bugatti. Lamborghini is one that was in the sport as a engine supplier for about 4 years. I did a video on this. I think one of the first videos back on this channel was, will manufacturers like Audi and Porsche enter F1? If you have not checked out that video, go to my oldest videos. And I think it's like the 3rd or 4th one on the channel. And I pretty much went through it on there. I went through, what was it, Audi, Porsche, BMW, Toyota, Lamborghini. I think someone else, I can't remember, but yeah, I went through it on that, and it was yeah, it was interesting to analyze, you know, just what they'd done in their respective times and their chances of coming back. Ronan Brady, I'd like to see Volkswagen to enter as they own Porsche. Yeah, that'd be good. Right, I am now coming to the end of this Q&A, guys. So if you have any final questions, then put it in the chat. And then I'll, you know, answer those. And then move on quickly before I end to what's coming up on the channel during the next, I think, 10 days between now and Thursday of the Brazilian Grand Prix. So get putting your questions in the chat quickly. JB, what car do you own in real life? I don't own one. I don't drive. I know that might be a shock, but yeah, I don't drive. Where are you from, Chaz? I'm not going to specify, but I think you can probably guess. The United Kingdom and not the north of the United Kingdom. Right. I will answer these final couple ones from Sebastian and Prussia. The first one from Sebastian is, who will be Vettel's replacement when he leaves Ferrari? If Red Bull Honda does not go to plan, Max Verstappen. But if Red Bull Honda does go to plan and Seb still leaves, I don't know. Maybe Ricciardo, who knows? Maybe Ricciardo. Maybe he could, if Renault are not doing what they should be doing by the end of 2020. We'll have to see, but yeah, we'll see. Prussia, do you think Hülkenberg has been unlucky not being on the podium? No, I don't think he has, because if you look at the chances he's had, he's made mistakes. For example, Brazil 2012, he bottled that chance. He had Baku 2017, made a silly mistake and cost himself a podium, what could have been a podium. So, no, I don't think he's been unlucky. He just hasn't been close enough or good enough when it matters to getting a podium, I'm afraid. That's just the way it's gone for him. But, right, we will move on from the Q&A and now go on, guys, to what is coming up on the channel between now and the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. So, these are the first two coming up. So, tomorrow will be the podcast where me and Niblo will go through the Mexican Grand Prix and answer any questions. By the way, if you do join the Discord server, you can ask questions which will be answered in the podcast. So, if you want to do that, link below to the Discord server and you can go ahead and do so. We're going to record it actually quite soon. So, you best be putting your questions in quite soon. So, yeah, that'll come out tomorrow between 4 and 5 PM UK time. On Thursday will be part 4, the penultimate episode of my Classic F1 2012 season review. So that's coming up for you guys between 4 and 5 PM on UK time on Thursday. The races that are going to be reviewed are Singapore, Suzuka, Korea and India. And then of course part 5 will be Abu Dhabi, Kota and Brazil. Then after that, this weekend will be another episode of the podcast, slightly earlier, between 3 and 4 PM UK time on Saturday afternoon. And then I will be live on Sunday at 3 PM UK time. So that's the next time I'm live is 3 PM on Sunday in the UK, where what we do in This Week in F1, if you're new to that series, is we go through the news stories this week in F1. There you go. So live at 3 PM UK time. Hopefully you guys can come along to debate the latest stories in the world of Formula 1. And then next week, there will be now a part 2 to that Ferrari battery issue explained. If you have not seen that video, then go and check it out. I uploaded it before the US Grand Prix. It was about, I'd say, about 2 weeks ago. So go check that out. It did very well. Did very well, that video. So thank you guys for viewing that. And if you did subscribe from that, then thank you very much. But yeah, there'll be a part 2 to that where we're going to go even deeper into this whole battery thing and maybe why the battery issue and this whole sensor thing might have been overrated and overstated in the media, and there are other issues which have caused that. We'll go into that deeper on the 6th of November, so that is in 8 days' time. That's next Tuesday. And then on the Thursday of the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend, the 8th of November, will be the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix preview, again between 4 and 5 PM UK time. But just to let you guys know, I am thinking of doing another video during this time period on a certain driver. It's not confirmed yet, it's currently 50-50. The reason I haven't put it on there is because I'm not sure yet if I'm actually going to do it, but I'm just letting you guys know, if this time next week, and if this video does get made, it'll come out next Monday. Don't be surprised if next Monday there is a video on the channel. That's all I'm going to say. It's currently 50-50 as to whether I do that video, but there you go. I'm going to try and see if I can do it. And if I can't, then maybe I'll do it during the winter. But that is it for this race review. Don't forget as well, guys, again, every single race weekend we do this type of content. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe on the bottom right of the screen, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe to the channel. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what did you think of the Mexican Grand Prix, and what did you think of Lewis Hamilton winning his 5th World Championship. And if you do have any questions that you could not ask because you couldn't turn up for the live stream, then put in the comments a question and I will try my best to answer that as soon as possible. As well, don't forget to join our Discord server. The best place to get notifications for my videos is the Discord server. So if you want notifications, you have to join that server. And if you want a question read out on the podcast tomorrow, then join the server, join the community, and you can go into the podcast questions tab and ask a question. So there you go. As well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. Great place to keep up to date with me and the channel. And don't forget to check out chazerhd.com, another place to keep up to date with me. But guys, I just want to say, again, thank you for the growth this weekend on the channel. Coming into this weekend, we had, I think, exactly 200 less subs. I think it was 1,520 subs. And now we have about 200 more. So again, guys, thank you so much. The channel is really growing. If you compare my channel now to the old channel this time last year, I actually have, I think, like 500 or 600 more subs than I did this time last year. And I've had less time to get it from 0 to 1,700. So again, thank you guys so much. The channel is growing, and I'm aiming to keep it growing over the winter. We have plenty of new things coming over the winter that hopefully will give you guys something to watch, and hopefully will keep you guys entertained. And I just want to throw a teaser out there. There will be, during the winter, probably from, say, Christmas until the end of January, plenty of stuff which you guys can get very involved in, maybe even appear on the channel. I'll just throw that teaser out there, and I'll get onto that further probably in a month or two time once I actually confirm what I'm going to be doing on that front. But guys, thank you so much for coming along for this live stream, and until the podcast tomorrow, I'll see you all then. But until the next live stream this Sunday at 3 PM UK time for This Week in F1 Live, I'll see all of you lovely people then.